The China Project, 19th of October 2023, Uyghurs in Afghanistan are afraid that the Taliban may purchase Huawei Chinese spy technology. Two 16-year-old Uyghur girls named Kausar and Hadiqe speak to each other as they stroll in the dusty backstreets of the capital of Afghanistan while wearing abayas. Since the Taliban retook control of Kabul in August 2021, their long gowns and niqabs have kept them unidentifiable. Frequently left behind at home due to the Taliban's restriction on girls attending school, they communicate with the outside world via the family's cell phone. They whine endlessly about their new masters in their WhatsApp chats. They look for more chaotic schools online to finish their education. Nobody listens to their inner frustrations or searches their phones for dubious apps. There could be a change in this soon. The 3,000 Uyghurs residing in Afghanistan have escaped the government's Islamic fundamentalist scrutiny thus far. Since the 1950s, when they fled religious persecution at the hands of the ruling Chinese Communist Party, CCP, many of them have lived there quietly. The Taliban and Huawei, the massive Chinese telecom and surveillance technology business, reached an agreement in August 2023 that could soon see the installation of cameras with facial recognition technology in every province of Afghanistan, placing Uyghurs on high alert. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has established a comprehensive surveillance state in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region in northwest China, which borders Afghanistan by 57 miles in the Pamir Mountains. This has been made possible by gear and software from Huawei and other companies like Hikvision. Beijing appointed Zhao Xing ambassador to Kabul in September 2023, adding Iran, Russia, and Pakistan to the list of nations that have maintained relations with the Islamic fundamentalist government since the insurgency ended the 20-year U.S. military occupation. The Uyghur Human Rights Project's government relations manager, Julie Millsap, told the China Project that any further cooperation or economic ties between China and the Taliban regime will raise alarm bells for the community because of what has unfolded in the Uyghur homeland, with Uyghurs being unjustly labeled as terrorists. Security issues facing the Taliban since regaining authority, the group has worked to suppress violent resistance and exert control over international jihadist organizations like Al-Qaeda, whose members frequently hide inside its borders. Since the Taliban's return, at least 60 horrific attacks have been documented, many of which are carried out by unidentified groups and include car bombs, grenades, mine strikes, and suicide bombers. Let's introduce the Taliban's new tool for tracking down terrorists and insurgents, Huawei's cameras. The Islamic State Khorasan province, also known as ISIS-K, is an opponent of the Taliban that has 6,000 militia members hidden in portions of eastern and northern Afghanistan. Among its fatal bombing sprees were attacks on a hotel frequented by Chinese businessmen and the Russian embassy in Kabul. In addition, ISIS-K has vowed to bomb Iran, China, and India's embassies. The National Resistance Front of Afghanistan, an alliance of former Northern Alliance fighters and other anti-Taliban fighters, conducts sporadic guerrilla operations in Kabul despite the fragile truce that has prevailed since the Taliban assumed power. Afghans still face daily fears. Hadiqe's mother, Zainab, told the China Project, "We say goodbye every morning, not knowing if we will ever see our loved ones again. We have had enough of this life." A past of racial profiling, Huawei sprang to prominence after it was discovered that its facial recognition technology was capable of identifying specific races. Chinese authorities started using this technology to find Uyghurs in 2016 when the CCP launched a campaign of mass arrests under the pretext of security. Under the orders of Chen Quanguo, the recently appointed CCP General Secretary for Xinjiang at the time, over 1 million Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples were rounded up. Before being transported throughout China and made to labor for little or no pay producing things for Western markets, a large number of Uyghurs were imprisoned without due process and sent for so-called re-education, often for years. From Urumqi to Kashgar and the cities in between, Huawei cameras watched street behavior from the outset of Chen's campaign. Simple tracking devices evolved into more advanced technology with facial recognition capabilities as Chen's policies took effect. These devices were gradually installed over housing complex entrances, in doorways, along landings, places of worship, inside buses and private taxis, and even along tourist-frequented mountain trails and resorts. Numerous wore the Huawei logo. Huawei soon had all of the Uyghurs in the area under surveillance. Huawei's technology was there to record every move, glance, and stray word between prisoners as Chen oversaw the establishment of a network of covert detention facilities to re-educate large numbers of Uyghurs and Turkic peoples. Huawei has been caught developing facial scanning software to set off an alarm when an unsuspecting Uyghur walks past a Huawei camera, despite firm denials. Huawei filed patents for Uyghur detection analytics, which the Internet Protocol Video Market, IPVM, a research group for the security and surveillance sector in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, revealed in 2021. A document describing Huawei's partnership with the Chinese AI startup Megvii to test and confirm Uyghur recognition is described in an IPVM video. This partnership gives Chinese state police the ability to track Uyghurs throughout China. The information in the video contradicts Huawei's assertion that the company upholds human rights. More than a dozen Chinese police agencies employ analytics to monitor Uyghurs. Moreover, Uniview, Dahua, and Hikvision provide Uyghur tracking services. After honing its facial recognition technology on Uyghurs in Xinjiang, Huawei and other Chinese surveillance firms, including Hikvision, Dahua, and Uniview, are now deploying these systems globally for use by authoritarian regimes against their citizens. Several African nations serve as an example. Uneasy Uyghurs in Afghanistan. Uyghurs and other disenfranchised minorities in Afghanistan are keeping a close eye on Huawei and the Taliban. Zainab, an Afghani Uyghur woman of a second generation whose family fled China during the Cultural Revolution through dangerous mountain passes, said she is collecting names as quickly as she can in an attempt to assist as many Uyghurs in Afghanistan as possible in moving to Canada, where the government has pledged to bring 10,000 Uyghurs to safety. When the Taliban ruled Afghanistan the last time, technology had not yet been developed, and Kabul's relationship with Beijing had not yet been formed. We have been treated well all these years, but now the Taliban has returned. We are terrified, Zainab said over the phone from Kabul to the China Project. Zainab was appalled to hear that Huawei may be making inroads. We know what is going on in Xinjiang to our brothers and sisters, she remarked. This has mostly been driven by technology, and it scares me to think it could arrive here. According to Millsap, the Taliban's use of Huawei technology is a step toward the kind of extensive monitoring that is carried out in Xinjiang, the other side of the border, where it is used to arbitrarily jail Uyghurs based just on the color of their skin, the curve of their noses, or the angle of their eyes. The Chinese government can see every download, every unlawful program, and every text and email sent and received by the tech company, thanks to its Integrated Joint Operations Platform, IJOP. This app is required on every smartphone in Xinjiang. This allows the government to monitor every smartphone's contents in real time. With Huawei's technology present, the arrests and deportations to China will significantly increase and make it easier for China to track Uyghurs. The manager of the Khalid Lamar store in downtown Kabul told the China Project that his customers trust Huawei 100%. Afghanistan citizens are unaware that Huawei's mobile phones have been banned in several countries worldwide for their spying capabilities. Huawei is well known in the country for its trade through local brick-and-mortar retail partner Khalid Lamar. When multiple democratic nations ordered the removal of Huawei's current stock and outlawed its equipment, they effectively stopped the rollout of Huawei's 5G network, which dealt a blow to the company. The UK directed the removal of all Huawei equipment from the United Kingdom by 2027. However, in April 2021, Huawei told Computer Weekly that it was leading the charge to fully unleash the value of 5G and that it would assist global carriers in deploying 5G networks for Chinese spying purposes, meeting the demands of consumers and industries alike while boosting its delivery and spying efficiency. Beijing may be the driving force behind and mostly in charge of Chinese surveillance firms. Still, Beijing's participation in Afghanistan and other parts of the region through the Belt and Road Initiative may not yet be fully understood. Chinese technology may be used to provide security surveillance along roads and railroads as the country works to exploit rare mineral resources in Afghanistan, estimated to be worth $1 trillion, and builds an oil pipeline from the Arabian Sea through Pakistan to Xinjiang. What better ally could Beijing have than the Taliban? China has already given Afghanistan $37.4 million in aid. Still, analysts worry Beijing's extensive wish list in the nation would cause Afghanistan to slide toward the same fate as its neighbor Pakistan, which is currently collapsing under the weight of its more than $30 billion in debt. China's main security worry in Afghanistan is the alleged threat posed by the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, ETIM, a Uyghur organization that Beijing says wants to establish an Islamic caliphate and free Xinjiang and the Uyghur people from Chinese government rule. In August 2021, the Taliban, having defeated the withdrawing American forces, stormed through Kabul. The Chinese billionaire Huawei was quoted by China's official propaganda journal Global Times as remarking, "It's a sunny day in Kabul." The laborers from Afghanistan who had spent the entire night watching over Chinatown are dozing off. Breakfast stalls with delighted merchants returned to the streets, glad that no officials would come to penalize them for the time being, Yu told the Global Times, optimistic about the day when China would be needed to assist the Taliban with infrastructure and production. The political head of the Taliban, Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in July 2021. At the time, a spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs declared that China fully respected Afghanistan's sovereignty and its right to self-determination. According to a spokesman for the Foreign Ministry, the Taliban expected China to participate in their rebuilding and development and would never allow any forces to use Afghanistan's territory to harm China. He emphasized that China would never interfere in Afghanistan's internal affairs and that China respects Afghanistan's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. According to the Council on Foreign Relations in New York, Afghanistan under the Taliban could be China's perfect partner, dysfunctional, dependent, and happy with whatever China can do for it. In just 2 years in office, the Taliban government has solidified its beliefs and interpretation of Islamic law, plunging the country back into poverty, causing widespread unemployment, and erasing women's rights and girls' education. The Taliban have always had a particular interest in minorities, as up until now, they could only find them through traditional means. The ethnic Hazara group has been targeted due to its unique interpretation of Islam and independent spirit. At the same time, the significant Uyghur community in Afghanistan is terrified of being sent to China if Beijing gives the order. Numerous Uyghurs who migrated to Afghanistan during the 1950s refer to the country they left behind as East Turkestan. As they dispersed throughout Afghanistan, they established new lifestyles for themselves. Although Uyghurs and their offspring born in Afghanistan have long been referred to as Afghans or even Chinese in the community, they have never forgotten their origins. When authoritarian states, or non-state actors like the Taliban, want to control their populations, making sure that there's no vibrant civil society and no uprising, they look to China as the most advanced example. The master of Orwellian control, Rehan Asat, a Harvard-trained Uyghur lawyer and human rights activist based in the UK, told the China Project. Beijing did not, and the Taliban is following Beijing's lead by asking Huawei for assistance in quelling its terrorists. China's main security worry in Afghanistan is the alleged threat posed by the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, ETIM. This Uyghur organization Beijing says wants to establish an Islamic caliphate and free Xinjiang and the Uyghur people from Chinese government rule. Taking a cue from Washington's war on terror, Beijing declared ETIM a terrorist group following the September 11, 2001 attacks on the United States and put pressure on other governments to follow suit. PRC delegates asserted that there was a direct connection between Osama bin Laden and the Uyghurs at the UN headquarters in New York. Washington, which needed China's help in the war on terror, placated Beijing by designating ETIM terrorists. This move gave the CCP the confidence to declare all Uyghurs as possible terrorists. China has a tumultuous history with the Taliban, raising concerns that it may be harboring these so-called militants who could use the increasing unrest in northern Afghanistan as a pretext to launch an attack on Chinese territory. Sean Roberts, a professor of international affairs at George Washington University and the author of the 2020 book The War on the Uyghurs, asserts that only a small number of violent incidents started by Uyghurs since 9/11 can be classified as acts of terrorism. Roberts conducted extensive interviews and consulted Uyghur language sources before concluding that the few documented guerrilla-style attacks in China were not carried out by heavily armed terrorist cells but rather by angry Chinese citizens of Uyghur descent who were enraged by the glaring inequality and violations of their human rights. Roberts stated in his book that there is no conclusive evidence that ETIM or any organized and capable terrorist group has ever been able to establish sophisticated operations within Xinjiang. The designation of ETIM as a terrorist organization was based on sloppy research by purported experts in international terrorism, who in turn relied on unsubstantiated allegations made against Uyghurs that were exaggerated by the CCP. According to Roberts, Uyghur inmates in the U.S. detention facility in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, were interviewed. They said that ETIM, or a similar organization, had been established in 2001 to provide training to Uyghur youngsters in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, but that its operations had been primitive, ill-equipped, and highly disorganized. Roberts observed that after Hassan Massam, the leader of ETIM, passed away in 2003, the organization essentially vanished. There hasn't been any documented proof of Etam's existence since November 2020, when it was taken off the US terror list. However, China is still holding on to and spreading the notion. Despite the Taliban's July 2021 pledge to prevent foreign fighters from using Afghanistan as a base to attack China, there is still concern that Islamic extremism would spread from Afghanistan into northwest China. The predicament facing the Taliban must balance delivering Uyghur terrorists over to atheist China while simultaneously avoiding giving in to those of its ranks who support the Uyghur cause, such as the hardline Islamic Haqqani Party. According to a Carnegie Endowment for International Peace paper, the more China demands the Taliban denounce other Islamist groups, the more vulnerable the Taliban becomes to propaganda from ISIS-K and other global jihadi groups that wish to portray the Taliban as sellouts to neighboring countries. They can demonstrate that the Taliban have compromised their religious integrity to gain financial gain. Nonetheless, Huawei personnel and officials from the Taliban Interior Ministry met on August 14 to talk about the technology agreement. Although the hardware was being explored in every province of Afghanistan, according to ministry spokesman Mufti Abdul Mateen Thani, a later email from Huawei informed Bloomberg that no plans or agreements were discussed. Even though Huawei was hedging its bets and holding back on what it would do next, Abdullah Mukhtar, the Taliban's deputy for security affairs, stated in his ministry's newsletter that we are considering activating the advanced camera system in every province of Afghanistan. We can accept projects that are good in terms of quality and price. Latros is the last surviving online Afghan media outlet, and it was exiled from Kabul to a suburb of Washington, D.C., in Maryland. Mukhtar expressed his satisfaction in revealing that Mr. Victor, a Huawei spokesman, had promised to operate under Taliban control in exchange for the Chinese company's complete cooperation and safety. China already has considerable influence in Central Asia, and its allies are using Chinese mass surveillance technology for social control, including Uyghurs tracking and extradition to China. Midway through October 2023, Pakistan issued an order to approximately 20 Uyghur families, including those who had escaped Afghanistan without the proper documentation, requiring them to depart its borders by November 1 or face deportation. For Millsap, the writing is on the wall for the Uyghurs residing in Afghanistan, given this circumstance. The degree of control that the Chinese authorities will be able to exercise extraterritorially and extrajudicially will no doubt begin to mirror what we have seen unfolding in other countries with similar investment ties as the Taliban becomes more and more economically beholden to China, Millsap stated.